In the summer of 2002, as the humid Missouri air pressed heavily against the windows of the St. Louis County Jail, a man named Maury Troy Travis slipped quietly from life. He left behind a house of horrors, dozens of unanswered questions, and the shattered lives of women whose names might never be known. This is the story of the streetwalker strangler, also known as the videotape killer. A man who did not merely kill, he documented, degraded, and toyed with his victims until, in the end, he became the jailhouse ghost he always seemed meant to be. Maury Troy Travis was born on October 25, 1965, in St. Louis, Missouri. His parents, Michael and Sandra Travis, lived initially in public housing near downtown. As a child, he was known as Toby by neighbors. When he was around 10, the family moved to a modest ranch house in Ferguson, a working-class suburb. By outward appearances, he was unremarkable. Neighbors recalled a polite boy who sometimes mowed lawns unasked, tidied hedges, and maintained a quiet reserve. His parents divorced in 1978, and his mother later remarried and divorced again. School records show little to indicate overt behavioral problems. No confirmed records of abuse or early criminal records exist in public sources. In adulthood, however, cracks began to appear. He reportedly developed a cocaine addiction, spent up to $300 a day on the drug, and dropped out of college. He turned to robbery, including shoe stores, culminating in a conviction in 1989 for armed robbery. He was sentenced to 15 years, but was paroled in 1994. In 1998, he was also convicted of drug possession and given a shorter term. After his release, he moved into a home owned by his mother in Ferguson and worked as a waiter at hotels in the St. Louis area. Some reports also place him at fine dining restaurants in Chesterfield. But behind that benign facade lay a darkness waiting to be unleashed. Sometime around 2000, Travis is believed to have committed his first known murder. The body of Mary Shields, about 61 years old, was found in East St. Louis, Illinois. Over subsequent months and years, a series of bodies, mostly women on the margins of society, would appear across Missouri and Illinois. Travis's victims were mostly African American women who often struggled with addiction or worked in prostitution. They were vulnerable socially, economically, and in many cases, already invisible to the systems meant to protect them. His method was as horrific as it was methodical. He would pick up women sometimes from an area known as the Stroll in St. Louis under the pretext of paid sex or drug deals, then bring them back to his house in Ferguson. Once there, he would imprison them in a concealed basement torture chamber. There, victims would be bound, restrained, degraded, tortured physically and verbally, and in some cases killed often by strangulation using belts or ligatures. What set Travis apart from many killers was the video documentation of his horrors. Videotapes found in his home filmed the torment, humiliation, and murder of his victims. One particularly notorious tape bore the title, "Your Wedding Day." In some sequences, women were blindfolded, gagged, ordered to recite their names or messages, and forced to beg for mercy as Travis mocked them, then strangled them, sometimes in view of the camera. Detectives who viewed those tapes reported lasting psychological effects. The scenes were so disturbing that the chief of police reportedly ordered counseling for any officers who viewed them. As bodies were discovered across county lines, investigators began to suspect a serial killer was active, but the killer remained elusive. From May to October 2001, at least 4 women, Teresa Wilson, Verona Thompson, Yvonne Cruz, and Brenda Beasley, were discovered tortured and strangled. The St. Louis Post-Dispatch ran a profile on Teresa Wilson and other victims. In response, an anonymous letter arrived at the newspaper addressed to reporter Bill Smith. The letter read, "Write a good one about Greenwade, and I'll tell you where many others are to prove I'm real. Here's directions to number 17. Tucked inside was a computer-generated map. That map had been printed from Expedia.com, and investigators traced the download back to a single computer in Ferguson Travis's. The map led the authorities to the approximate location of a skeletal female victim, a body number 17, that Travis himself had claimed. That digital footprint, a map printout from an account, became the key that unlocked Travis's identity. For once, his hubris became his downfall. On June 7, 2002, law enforcement arrested Maury Travis without resistance. A sweeping search of his residence revealed the hidden torture chamber in the basement walls, covered with blood, hidden cells, restraints, bondage gear, stun devices, videotapes, clippings of crime articles, and the very map he had mailed. In interrogation, Travis showed contempt. Sergeant Tim Sachs recalled him drumming his fingers, sliding in his chair, staring defiantly. "Victims," he sneered when challenged. To him, said Sachs, these women were less than human. Investigators cataloged and stored mountains of evidence. Videotapes, a computer used for mapping, cell drawings, walls with blood beneath fresh paint, DNA samples from victims linked via semen, tire tracks, and other forensic clues. By the time of his arrest, Travis had been linked definitively to 12 murders, though he himself claimed to have killed 17 women, and some suspect his total might be 20 or more. Travis was placed in the St. Louis County Jail under suicide watch, with guards scheduled to check on him every 15 minutes. Yet on June 10, 2002, those intervals failed. 2 consecutive checks were missed. In the darkness, Travis fashioned a noose from bed sheets, tied them to an air vent, and hanged himself. He was declared dead in the 8th floor one-man cell. A photograph from 2 days later shows the stark cell and the vent above the bed. His mother later disclosed he had long claimed mental illness dating back to age 14, and in his final note he wrote he had never been happy. By killing himself, Travis evaded full judicial reckoning. Many cases against him never reached trial. Many victims remained unidentified. Families waited for justice that never came. Among the more known names are Alyssa Greenwade, 34, missing in Missouri, body found April 1, 2001 in Illinois. Betty James, approximately 46, discovered a few months later. Teresa Wilson, a more widely publicized case. Brenda Beasley, Verona Thompson, Yvonne Cruz linked through forensic evidence and court documents. Mary Shields, the presumed early victim. Cassandra Walker, one victim captured on video in Travis's basement. In decades after his death, some previously unidentified remains tied to Travis have finally been named. As recently as 2025. Kelly Johnson, Crystal Lay, and Carol Hemphill were identified as former victims. Still, several victims remain as anonymous shadows, their stories untold, their families unsure. Travis's own numbering the map to number 17 haunts investigators as a cruel riddle. Did he lie? Overstate? Or are there still bodies waiting in the soil, waiting for names? The story of Maury Travis is one of both monstrous cruelty and chilling banality. It offers lessons and warnings across multiple dimensions. From the accounts of detectives and victims, Travis saw his victims as less than human. His cruelty was not simply lethal, it was performative, sadistic, merciless. He filmed suffering, he taunted, he demanded the victims speak on camera. The undercurrent was control. Paradoxically, it was his desire to be seen, to be real, that undone him. That letter, that map, that decision to reach out to media betrayed a compulsive need to assert power. His hubris became his trap. Travis targeted women who were marginalized, addicts, sex workers, people whose disappearances might not be pursued with urgency. The social invisibility of these victims contributed to the delay in linking the murders. Furthermore, in the jail, even under suicide watch, lapses in guard oversight allowed Travis enough time to kill himself, denying justice and closure to survivors. The fact that the map could be traced via Expedia and internet logs, a tool of modern criminal detection, shows how technology, once used for anonymity, also became a means to track. Travis's use of the internet ultimately betrayed him. Legacy of fear and memory. Communities in Ferguson, Jennings, Delwood, and other St. Louis neighborhoods were irrevocably altered. Streets once walked without thought became places of dread. Neighborhoods are subjected to heavy police presence, fear, and suspicion. The house in Ferguson, the basement chamber, remained long after Travis's death. In 2014, a tenant named Katrina McGaw rented the home, unaware of its gruesome past. Only when she saw a documentary did she discover the truth. She later vacated, in conflict with the landlord who was Travis's mother. Even the furniture bore the stain of history. News reports note that the dining room table featured in crime scene photos was given by the owner Travis's mother to the tenant. Maury Troy Travis is dead. The jailhouse ceiling holds his final secret, but the wounds remain in families without closure, in names still lost, in communities forever haunted. We may never know the full tally of lives he destroyed, but for every woman whose name is reclaimed, we rekindle a glimmer of justice. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and help us carry these stories forward. Because human wreckage is not just tragedy, it is a challenge. To remember, to honor, to be vigilant. Until next time, may silence not be our inheritance.